All right. Good morning. How's everyone doing? I'm super excited to be here. This is my first time in Australia, and I've been absolutely positively blown away by this beautiful country that you have here. And most of all, I've had an amazing time getting to know some of you and look forward to hopefully hanging out with you in the rest of my week here. It's an amazing, amazing place. So before we get started, can everyone stand up for me real quick? By show of hands, how many people went to the party last night? All right. So I think some people are still waking up. We need to get some energy going. So what I need everyone to do is, on the count of three, we all need to clap in unison. You still have your hand raised? Do you have a question? You good? You were just at the party too long last night. You're good. So on three, we need to clap in unison, not after three, on three, all right? So everyone look ready. That guy might still be at the party right now. What's going on there? So look ready. You totally don't look ready. Okay, all right, ready? On three. 1, 2. Oh, it wasn't bad. That was like, I give that about a BB+. Let's see if we can get it a little tighter. Ready? 1, 2. What? Really tight now. Ready? 1, 2. That was awesome. Cool. All right. Thanks for humoring me. All right, let's see if we can get this moving in the right direction. So this is me. I am a kid in a candy store. I have an awesome job in recruiting. I feel really fortunate to have it. This is me from the day I accepted my offer to be the recruiting guy at LinkedIn and every day since. And I have a unique job because I get to help LinkedIn grow its business through hiring fantastic people. And I get to do really, really unique things like stand in front of you, who are my colleagues in the profession of recruiting. I get to hang out with Parker, our product guys, and talk about what we're going to do next. I get to spend time with Andrew and the marketing team. I get to work with Dan and our customers and learn a tremendous amount. I feel very, very fortunate to be in the job I'm in. It's a cool gig. And I really want to take a second to just thank everyone as well for being LinkedIn members. LinkedIn would not exist if it was not for our members. We're a members-first organization, so thank you for being a member. It means a lot. And then secondly, thank you for being an enterprise customer for our Talent Solutions business. You guys make a big impact on us, and we're grateful to have you as customers, so thank you. So a little bit about me, just want to give you some background on who I am. I've been in recruiting since I got out of school. I lived in my parents' house when I got out of college. All I wanted to do is move out of my parents' house. I grew up in Boston, and I'm the son of a very strict Irish Catholic set of parents. So all I wanted to do is move out of my house. A friend of the family said, "Brendan, you'd be a great headhunter." I didn't know what that meant. They hooked me up with an interview, and I was told, if you blow it your first year, you'll make $22,000. And I said, where can I sign? And that was the start of my recruiting career. Since then, I've done a lot of fun stuff. I started out in the search business. I worked for a company called Sapient and traveled around the world with them, growing them from about 300 to 3,000 people. I ran recruiting for Microsoft Research, which is Microsoft's academic research lab, which was really cool. I ran HR for a startup for a couple years. And then in 2010, I joined LinkedIn. So one thing I think we can all recognize is the world of recruiting has changed. So I'm probably dating myself by talking about this, but when I started recruiting, give you a few stories. So go back, picture sort of really me dressed in a really cheesy suit, and there was a guy named Bruno who lived in New York. I don't know if that was his actual name, but I could call up Bruno, and he would get me our competitors' corporate directories. I didn't know how he got them, where he got them. I didn't want to know. But as a recruiting guy at that point in time, just getting a name, title, and phone number, I thought I was the man. I thought I had a competitive strategic advantage over any of my competitors just because I had that information. Can anyone relate to that? And remember that? Another thing that I chuckle about is, so my first job was in Boston. During lunch break, I'd go out and get a sandwich at some of these sandwich shops around town. Each one of these businesses would have just like a big glass fishbowl on the counter. And they would have these little raffles, and to enter the raffle, you put in your business card, right? So it's hundreds and hundreds of business cards in these fish bowls. So I'd be standing in line, chef would turn his back, I would reach into the fish bowl, grab as many of these cards as possible, and then just turn around and walk out the door. But that was because I just had name, title, and a phone number. That was a big deal to me. And then finally, I stepped into the 21st century last year. my wife and I moved house, and she said, honey, can you please get rid of those 5 boxes that are covered in dust that have been in the garage for years and years? I'm like, no, can't. Absolutely no way. Those things are like gold to me, honey. I can't get rid of them. So I can at least go through and see if you can cut down on the amount of stuff in there. So I go in and look through the boxes, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of CVs in there from 1999, 2000, 2001. But I was so mentally attached to the fact that information and data was my lifeblood as a recruiter. Obviously, the world has changed. I've recycled that and shredded those boxes of CVs, and data is everything. The world is completely different now, and it's the most exciting time. So I am now breaking every rule of a good PowerPoint presentation by sticking a lot of words on a slide, so bear with me. But I want to share this with you. This is sort of an opportunity statement that I wrote right when I started in recruiting at LinkedIn. And the reason I wanted to share it is because I believe this is our collective opportunity. Right? This is our opportunity given the world has changed. So let me read this to you. The recruiting organization who figures out how to extract the value of the web's people data and how to build a recruiting team model that operationalizes at scale will define the future of talent acquisition. And that is a mouthful. Wow. But the point here is that given that the world is totally different, given that I don't need to call Bruno to get our competitor's corporate director to feel like I can be successful, there's information everywhere. I still have yet to see a recruiting organization, and there are some incredible recruiting teams I've seen, there are some incredible people I've met here today, but I've yet to see anyone really define the future of talent acquisition by taking the web's data about people and build an incredibly powerful engine for recruiting. And what do I mean by that? Think about other parts of businesses, right? Think about financial trading. Think about the most sophisticated sales organization. Think about the most sophisticated business operations team. Think about how sophisticated those organizations are and the type of impact they have using data to influence the business, to make change and drive business decisions. This is our time to step up and play that type of role within our company. So we're going to talk more about that. I'm going to take you through my journey at LinkedIn. I'm going to tell you about some stuff that worked, some stuff that didn't, and hopefully leave you with a couple tips you can take back to your office at the end of the week. So this is a photo of Silicon Valley. Won't spend too much time talking about it, but really just wanted to give you some context of what life is like for me day to day. People probably heard about the war for talent that's on in Silicon Valley, and I've been in recruiting when markets have been really, really hot, but I've seen nothing like this before. And part of the reason is I can literally take a stone. Whoa, it's literally. Oh, I lose my mic. Wow. All right. We got it. We're good. I'm not going to throw rocks anymore. But Google's literally right down the street. Twitter is probably about 30 miles up the highway. Facebook's around the corner. But the point here is there are these big global brands that have incredible amount of resources and do a ton of stuff to differentiate what they're doing to compete for talent. You probably heard about this stuff too. You can do anything from get a massage, get fresh squeezed organic juice, get a gourmet lunch, breakfast, dinner, go bowling, play cricket. It's absolutely insane what companies are doing to compete and differentiate themselves for talent. So I stepped into this role at LinkedIn thinking, my gosh, this is not going to be very easy. And I know it's the same for you here. I know that to be true. We have a recruiting team that operates in this region and across the APAC geography. The market here is equally challenging. Raise your hand if you can relate to the challenges I'm talking about. Get them up. Okay. And then you've got your own set of companies that are out there doing unique things, trying to stay ahead of each other to compete for talent. So we're all in this thing together. This is a global problem we're trying to solve in terms of how to really move the industry that we're in of talent acquisition together. So now, bear with me as I go back to 2010. I'm the kid in the candy store. So these are literally slides that I presented to our CEO and our executive staff in 2010. So has anyone seen the movie Jerry Maguire? So there's a scene in Jerry Maguire where the character Jerry Maguire has this moment, day before a big meeting. He's up all night. He thinks he's got the plan to change the world. That is me for about 5 straight nights preparing this presentation. I'm the man, I'm the kid in the candy store. I am going to absolutely positively crush this presentation with our executive staff. There's no way I'm not going to nail it. I'm putting together the future of recruiting, these Jedi ideas that I had. I started using absolutely terribly cliche sports quotes like this one about Wayne Gretzky, skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been. I thought I had this thing nailed. So I'm in the meeting, going through my presentation. I'm on the Wayne Gretzky slide thinking, like, this is my moment. I am absolutely they're going to love me. And I start hearing, stop, Brendan, time out, stop the presentation. I started feeling sort of a chill run up my back. I look up, our CEO is literally giving me one of these, and this is something you don't want to get from your CEO ever, and definitely you don't want to get one in your biggest presentation at your new job. He said, Brendan, enough vision, we need engineers. So point being, that was the worst presentation I've ever given in my life. Do not do what I did. It was a nightmare. I'm thoroughly embarrassed even just talking about it. So I bring that up because that was a bad idea. I was locked in a conference room, drinking lots of caffeine, listening to Jay-Z, creating this PowerPoint presentation that I thought was great. I did it completely by myself. Don't do it alone. The point here is there were so many people that could have initially helped me set myself up to succeed across the business that I did not include what I was doing. So I immediately changed sort of my course and took a different approach and started reaching out to as many people as I could. I talked to our data folks, our finance folks, our HR business partners, our compensation team, our comms team to say, hey, I just absolutely had a train wreck of a presentation. I need your help to really make sure we're building a much more comprehensive plan. And it was clear at that point in 2010, there was a lot that we were missing. LinkedIn had a good story. I mean, I loved the product at that point. I obviously knew what the company was about. But really what it meant for our potential hires was, what does it mean to have a career at the company? We didn't have a fully comprehensive story about what that meant and what that looked like. We didn't have a compensation structure. Couldn't really articulate what that meant for a potential hire. So I needed to spend a lot of time with our HR folks and our compensation folks to build out this story. So that's what was missing. And then what we really needed was, I had no data. LinkedIn was a data-driven company, but the recruiting function itself was kind of a disaster in terms of data, right? We had an ATS, of course, but we didn't have any data that meant anything. We were swimming in spreadsheets and Google Docs that 98% of the time were inaccurate and made us look like absolute jackasses. It was not a good situation. So I need to spend some time pulling together a cross-functional set of folks to sort of build our story, talk about sort of the employee value proposition and what it means to work at the company, tie that into our culture and values so we can compete against these companies doing these wild, cool, awesome things, and then bring that into a repeatable platform, something that could scale, something that we could have some clarity on how we're going to move forward together that was repeatable, predictable. So that's a little bit about sort of how I pulled together and sort of regrouped after a total disaster. And then one ingredient I wanted to talk about that went into that is back to this differentiation. Because, again, these companies that I could walk probably half a mile and be on their campus were doing these kind of wild, crazy things. Last thing I wanted to do, I am definitely not a guy who wants to be sort of me too, right? We didn't want to copy what every other company was doing. Lots of ideas were floating around. We said, we need to highlight things that are different about what we do as a company. We don't want to be like, oh yeah, we do that too. So a couple of quick things I'll point out. One, recruiting can absolutely not take credit for this, but it's something we wove into our story, is every other Wednesday, our CEO is in front of the entire company leading a company all hands. It may not sound like a big deal to many people. To me, it is because it is the most incredible, powerful, insightful meeting that I've ever been at any company. Because it happens without fail. It's all couched in our mission, vision, values, strategic objectives. The number one agenda items, our number one operating priority, which is talent. It's done with a sense of humor. It's done with a tremendous amount of transparency and candor. And I tell our recruiting team, hey, if you don't go to the all hands, you're failing the IQ test. One, if you want to know what's going on at the company, go to the meeting. And then secondly, if you want to understand our culture and values, the meeting in and of itself is an embodiment of our culture and values. So that's something that's pretty cool. And then one thing I wanted to mention is something called In-Day. So In-Day is 1 day per month where you can do whatever you want. And I mean whatever you want. It's an opportunity to really focus on transformation. LinkedIn, as a company, we think a lot about transformation. And transformation for us has 3 components. It's transformation of self, company, and world. We need people that we hire to align around it. It's a rallying point for the employees. So on In-Day, if you're into breakdancing, you can have a breakdancing class. If you want to hack, doesn't matter who you are. If you're an engineer, technical, non-technical, you can build product ideas. You can solve problems using technology. Some of the best hackers in the company are not in engineering. One of the best guys is in marketing. The recruiting team has done hacks. It's really unique. A lot of people volunteer on that day. That's something I often do. I recently spent my time using my knowledge about recruiting and HR to help nonprofits think about how to leverage LinkedIn. Our legal team did some pro bono work helping people that needed legal assistance for housing. So really interesting stuff that adds a dimension of differentiation in terms of our employee experience. And then we have great speakers who come in around In-Day. So Ariana Huffington of Huffington Post was in recently, and it ranges to folks like Deepak Chopra, who's been in to talk to our employees. So it was something I feel really good about because it wasn't Me Tooism, it was something that's different and gives back to our employees. So that's a little bit about building sort of these components and all these ingredients we need to come together. So now I'm going to dive much more deeply into recruiting day-to-day and some of the things we needed to do in our recruiting function to equip our recruiters to hopefully go after that opportunity I talked about earlier with that terrible run-on sentence. How many people know what this is? By a show of hands. That's it? Get them up if you know. What about purple unicorn? Is it by show of hands? Purple unicorn, does that mean anything? So purple squirrel is basically one of those searches we've all done where it's something like this. Hiring manager's like, we got to go hire someone right away. We need someone who's a PhD in computer science from MIT. Person also needs to be able to manage an organization of somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 people. They also have to be able to architect solutions. We want someone who's lived in Japan, speaks Japanese, but also speaks Mandarin, and ideally has an MBA from either Wharton or INSEAD, something like that. Something you get those searches and you're like, this is going to be an absolute nightmare. What I have seen happen, I have done myself, and I'm embarrassed to share it, but go give my level best. We want to please, right? A lot of us in recruiting want to please, and we'll talk about that because I think that's a bad thing at times. We go off, we try to conduct a search, a week passes, a month passes, a quarter passes, 100 days pass. And what happens? Hiring manager's definitely not happy. Hiring manager thinks I'm an idiot. Recruiter, me, thinks like the hiring manager doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't realize that we can't find this type of person. It's an absolute disaster. So we started to build some capability and train our recruiters on just how to use data in a really simple way to set some expectations and some context around the level of effort it takes to do recruiting. Because everyone thinks they can just do recruiting and we can hire that PhD in computer science in a month. So this is an actual set of criteria from an actual search we did for our network operations team. These are folks that are sort of hard-charging, demand excellence. They have a massive sense of urgency. They're drinking, smoking 24/7 to keep the site up and running. They're an amazing team, and they want stuff done yesterday. So this is actual criteria that they shared with us, and we knew this is going to be a purple squirrel, right? It's like, okay, this is not going to be good if we need to handle this differently. So basically what we told these guys was, look, we're going to be back in an hour. Thanks for giving us information. And they said, back in an hour? We want you coming back next week with a bunch of profiles. We said, no. We're going to come back in an hour. We need you to prioritize this and make time. We want to see you in an hour. We'll be back. So we came back with this slide and said, guys, here's the deal. We're definitely going to take on this search. It's going to take us probably two to 3 years to complete the search. There's 7 people on LinkedIn who meet your criteria. So we just want to make sure we're all clear on what we're getting ourselves into here. Holy shit, I can't believe it. They brought their team into this, the VP's office. We were looking at this data. And immediately they were sharing in our pain. They realized, whoa, this is much more difficult than I thought. So we said, well, maybe we can think about what we can change here. Maybe this is 2 jobs. Maybe it's a different job. Maybe we need to just change the criteria. Maybe we just need to change your expectation on what it's going to take to do this. And oh, by the way, so when your boss or your boss's boss or the CEO mentions one thing about this search, what we need you to do is share this slide with them. We need to have this message together. And so immediately, the way we were perceived in that conversation as recruiters changed. Gave us a ton of breathing room to operate differently, and our credibility began to increase. So this started us down the path of trying to go after this opportunity to build a different type of recruiting organization. And by no means are we there, but we're making progress. So that was a step forward. But we really wanted to build something that was much more scalable. So if you have a pen and paper, take it out. This is the part where I'm going to show you charts and graphs that are going to give you every answer you need. Okay? So grab your pens and paper. This is how you up your data game. You ready? You guys don't look ready. All right, here we go. It's going to take a while. You get it? You get it? So I was going to show those things, but my very smart folks that I've been partnering with in communications and design are like, do not show too many charts and graphs. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we use some data to really influence the business in a different way more broadly, beyond just a search. So a lot of this is around sort of understanding supply and demand, but these are real scenarios, so I'll walk you through, that come up all the time. Recruiting is frustrated because we think, hey, why the heck aren't we either opening up a development center in a new city, or why can't we go recruit and relocate people out of a new geography? We've tapped out this market. There's an opportunity elsewhere. How many people have been in that situation where you think, like, we got to go to a new market to recruit? Anybody? So a few of you. Well, for us, it happens a lot. Competing for engineers is tough. So a few different things we've done in using LinkedIn data is not wait for the business to ask us to figure this stuff out, or even worse yet, wait for them to tell us that, hey, oh, by the way, we're going to open up a new office in XYZ city. We want to start having these conversations proactively with the business, again, to really raise our credibility using data. So let's think about this. There's really 4 major components of what we think about, and we want to train our recruiters to be constantly thinking about day-to-day, week-to-week, quarter-to-quarter. It's one, where is the talent? This isn't about individual candidates. It's where overall the talent pools. Connectedness matters. We'll talk about what that means in a little bit more detail. Where are the exact skills and the seniority level you need globally? And then lastly, how do you compete in some of those talent markets for candidates? So let's talk about this in more detail. So the where is simply pulling data on where we need to be. So hiring engineers is tough for us. So we pulled a bunch of data, looking across the globe at where are the most engineers that meet our criteria. It's pretty simple. So where's the supply? We found there was a good supply in New York, Bangalore, and Seattle outside of the Bay Area. We want to look at those things closely. And then we also looked at the demand. Which of those geographies is there a high demand for that talent? That's important for us to know so we can have a different type of conversation with the executives that we support. And then secondly, we looked at this data and we want to think about how connected are our employees to those talent pools. So we had New York, Bangalore, Seattle, and we looked at it carefully. Connectedness matters, probably pretty obvious to some, but if your employees are connected to a potential talent pool you want to get into, obviously people in that market are going to be aware of your company because they know people at your company. Getting referrals will be a heck of a lot easier, and statistically, if someone's connected to someone at a company, they're more likely to accept a job at that company. And what we found was that in Bangalore, our employees were 3 times more connected to the talent market for engineers there than any other region we were thinking about. That matters a lot if it comes to writing a big check to open up a new office or make a big investment for recruiting and talent. We also wanted to look at skills and seniority. Big area of focus we had was engineers with 3 to 5 years of experience. Applications engineers. Every Monday needs to report to our CEO, what's up with the application engineers? Where are we with apps engineers? It was tough. So we looked at these markets and we also found some interesting things. We found out that the skill mix in different cities varied. We found that New York City, as an example, there was 8 to 10 years of experience was the average for these types of applications engineers. Bangalore had the right set of skills. We didn't want people with 8 to 10 years experience. We wanted earlier in career people. That was important for us to know. And then lastly, we wanted to look at win-loss rates. So we now knew where the engineers were. We understood how connected our employees were to that target market for talent. We understood where the right skill mix was. Last thing we want to know is, do we compete well against the incumbents in that market? That's important to know before we give some advice. Do we win or lose against who would be recruiting against in any of these new cities or new geographies? And the reason I bring this up is because if we were doing this well, things would change, right? All of a sudden, we're the influencer. So the scenario is something like this. Hey, executive, CEO, Mr. Ms. VP, I know you haven't asked about this, but I want to give you some insight into what the heck is going on in the talent market. We believe there's opportunity for us to go into new markets. We took a look at some data, and I want to share it with you because I think it'd be good to open up a conversation about this. We think Bangalore is a fantastic opportunity for us to go in there. We found there's a good supply, there's a demand for engineers there. We think we can compete well against who's in the market. Our employees are 3 times more connected to the target talent we want to get after. And oh, by the way, we looked at our win-loss rate against the companies in Bangalore, and we do darn well. So I know you haven't asked for this, but I wanted to share it with you, see if we can get a conversation going. Change is how we're perceived. So this is stuff we're still building into the DNA of our recruiting organization, but it's stuff that changes the perception of the function. So that was good progress. This is stuff that we work on constantly and think about how to perfect and make sure we can hire recruiters that can do this stuff. And now I'm going to share with you a little bit of work we're doing around how to retool our entire recruiting organization to think differently about sourcing. So for me, given the fact that I don't need to call Bruno in New York City, identifying candidates is not the challenge. I don't have to pay someone $150 an hour to sleuth around the world and find the name of a great architect. Chances are I can find probably at least more than 50% of them pretty easily. What I've found with all of this, and back to the whole thing like save your vision for another day because everyone's gotten a vision idea, the hardest possible thing about building a recruiting engine that's different for me has been operationalizing, productizing it, if you will. Everyone talks a lot of smack about big vision on what they want to do and how incredible we can use data and what we can do. Hardest thing is how exactly do you do it, right? It's hard. It's hard. Particularly if you're going fast, growing quickly, to really build a new process, measure it, and understand how to do it is really, really hard. So last year, about this time, last summer, we got a cross-functional group of people in a room for about 2 days and just said, look, we need to do things differently. We need to rewire how we're going to recruit and how we're going to source. We're not really getting after this opportunity. We're not yet advancing the way we need to. And remember, don't do it alone. The people in that room were not just recruiting folks. If I could do one thing over my career, my bias would be automatically collaborate and ask for help. So we wanted to make sure we had a cross-functional set of folks in that room. And spending some time with these folks, we borrowed a page out of our sales organization and a philosophy that a lot of good sales and marketing teams use called Size of Prize. It's a pretty straightforward idea, but a really powerful one, where it's about segmenting your market, segmenting your customers. And in the sales analog, the idea is that you want to look at your customers, you want to understand how much potential opportunity there is for revenue on one axis, and on the other axis, look and study what are the signals that would tell you whether that customer is going to buy. So you want to find lots of revenue opportunity, they have an affinity for your service or product, and spend your time on the upper right quadrant, what we call the red carpet. That is where the people that have lots of opportunity and they really like what you're doing, prioritize your time there. We wanted to take that approach to recruiting. We'll talk a little bit more about why this has worked well for us. So this is a real example. This is actual work. It's happening now. The throughput is resulting from this. We're feeling really good about. So how does this work? Sit down with our engineering leadership team and say, look, we don't want to be sending you candidates every week. We don't want to be running keyword search after keyword search after keyword search. We want to work with you for a couple, 3 weeks to get really, really, really clear, in this case, on who the world's best, what an excellent systems infrastructure engineer looks like. And it took some time. It was beyond just sort of company and background education. But the point was, we want to work together to define this market in a meaningful way. And the idea was, get to the point where there's deep, deep commitment on the part of our hiring managers and executives. That commitment is, in this case, we found 2,000 that the engineering leadership team really liked. And the commitment was, so here's the deal. These 2,000, we need your commitment. You would hire them today. Because we're going to spend 2-3 weeks working with you on defining this market. Obviously, we need to interview them. We need to see if they culturally align to our values. But the point being, we want to get out of the business of, is this a good candidate? Is this a good candidate? We want to identify it ahead of time. So we got that commitment. And then we segmented these 2,000. against, on one axis is equality, who meets the most criteria that we've defined for the spec. And on the other axis is the temperature affinity. Signals from these candidates that tell us that they would be potentially a good fit for the company or be open to hearing from us. Those signals are pretty straightforward. Do they follow the company on LinkedIn? Do they follow people we think is important? Do they look at content that we think is meaningful? And most importantly, are they connected to people at LinkedIn that carry some degree of weight? Okay, so we plotted these folks. These are real numbers. We found that 699 of these folks were people that were high on quality, big signals that they potentially would like LinkedIn, and new people at the company. We funded someone. We actually went to our CFO and said, look, just to be clear, we don't, to date, we don't pipeline talent. All of our hiring managers, everyone's like, pipeline, where's pipeline? We had to have a very sober conversation. To be clear, we are funded to, by the skin of our teeth, put butts in seats as fast as we possibly can. If we happen to pipeline, it's luck. But if we want to really commit to pipelining talent, we need to fund people that are not focused on recs to go manage what we call this total addressable market for talent. So we hired some folks called talent market strategists and just focus on this. Their world is those 699, that's their entire life. Don't have to run any more searches, don't have to worry about who to go find. You've been handed who the best people are. Your entire life over the next month, quarter, years is to convert as many of those people. Have coffee, dinner, whatever you need to make sure that these people have LinkedIn top of mind. And then on the one-to-many sections, particularly the folks in the bottom left, these are people that are pretty good. They made it above our bar, but they don't know anything about LinkedIn. My philosophy is, let's just not spam them. Let's just not put a cold call into them. Let's really warm them up in an intelligent way. Don't send them a job ad, but why don't we have our engineers build real, meaningful, personalized, very relevant content for that population and serve it up to them? So we went to our engineers and said, we know you guys hate to be marketed to, but what about that research paper you guys wrote? Could you condense that down to something that might be more manageable in terms of size, and can we maybe serve it up in a sponsored update targeted specifically at these people? So that's the strategy we took to warm up these other quadrants, if you will, and take a patient sort of midterm, long-term view that whether we hire some of these people tomorrow or in 2 years, I mean, it matters, but it doesn't matter that much. What matters most is that we get them one way or another. So that's a little bit about how we segment the market. One key element of this whole thing sounds really, really obvious, but I've screwed this up so many times it's embarrassing. But obviously no one likes a cold. What does that mean? I tell salespeople, don't ever call me unless you get introduced to me. I won't even pay it. I don't care who you are, what your product is. If you're not smart enough to get introduced to me through finding out who you know that I may know, I'm not going to do business with you. So many times we have not applied those lessons to recruiting. So here's real life scenarios that happen. This actually happened. The names have been taken out to protect the guilty. Recruiter finds a candidate, in this case, Nicole Smith. Awesome candidate, woohoo, let's go get her. Sends an in-mail, by the way, a really bad in-mail. It says, cheesy stuff that I just think is awful. Turns out Nicole Smith's best friend, former colleague, sits on the same floor as the recruiter sending the in-mail. This candidate, Nicole Smith, immediately emails her friend that sits across the floor from our recruiter. What the heck is this? Don't these folks know that we're good friends, we've worked together, et cetera? And the reality is the recruiter should know that, because all you gotta do is look at LinkedIn and realize Nicole is connected to someone on their same floor. Turned out to be just very, very embarrassing. There's no reason for that to happen. And then another scenario that I've lived, which is awful, fly out Joe Smith, maybe even from another country, I was gonna say another city, but fly him in from another country to interview. Joe spends the afternoon with the company, things are great. Someone comes by my desk at the end of the day, Brendan, what's going on? Hey, I see you brought in Joe Smith for an interview. Yeah, guy's great. Gonna hire him as a director. No, he's not. He worked for me for 5 years. I worked with him for 5 years. Absolutely, positively don't hire him. Completely embarrassing. Point being is that there's no reason to cold contact anyone ever again in recruiting. I tell folks on the recruiting team, if you're doing that, like it happens too many times, you just shouldn't be on the team. There's too much data out there all over the place for you to not have the opportunity to get warmly introduced to someone. It's another part of the IQ test. If we fail this, guys, we're not living up to our opportunity that's sitting in front of us. So now what? So let's pause for a second. We talked a little bit about the disastrous presentation I had, bringing together the partners outside of recruiting to solve some problems together and build a platform and approach together and differentiate LinkedIn's story, which is really, really helpful. We dove deeply into how are we going to arm our recruiters with a new approach around data to hopefully differentiate what we're doing as a function and go after that opportunity statement I mentioned. So why does all this stuff matter that I just mentioned? Some of that segmentation. Well, in my mind, this is how recruiting really works today. It really works that way. Because think about it. I realized after going through this work and building this approach to segmenting and prioritizing, prior to doing that, I never prioritized anything. Absolutely didn't prioritize the right things. So just with that segmentation, you go back to those 699 systems infrastructure engineers, that is the priority for the recruiters. That's it. Just focus on that. We have the signals, the information, the insight, the path to get after these people, and we have the commitment from the engineering leadership team that says those are the people we want to hire. Why should we put resources against anything else? But in the past, how did things work? Ask this question to people all the time. The answers are, well, the most important recs. Forget the recs. How do you prioritize the candidates you get after? I don't think I ever did. It was a really hot referral. Someone looked like they have a great background. If I find someone with a good background, what's bad is that a lot of times I was so eager to get in touch with them that I'd sent some spammy, terrible thing. I lost that opportunity to engage them. But now, using data to segment, you can really get very, very clear on how to prioritize. Again, you have the commitment from the executives. You search once, you're not worried about keyword search jockeying all day long. Your outreach is going to be tailored because you have a warm path to people and a clear signal. And then most of all, you really can understand the market in a new and different way because you've put some parameters around it. So the big message is here, think about whether you actually prioritize which candidates you're going to go after. I'd be dying to talk to folks after this to see if anyone has some thoughts how to do this. Again, my big sort of aha moment is like, I have just been awful at prioritization in my career. So in all of this, there's a lot we need to do to continue to measure and listen. And at the end of the day, building an operation with some data, it's really important. I think there's an incredible opportunity for us to go after together in the profession of recruiting. But at the end of the day, it's really about your brand. And for us, we want to measure our brand. We want people to love our brand as a company, our brand as a recruiting team. We want our hiring managers to sort of embody our brand. So we measure this stuff all the time. So it's stuff we're constantly looking at. We use Net Promoter Score to measure a lot of things we do. These are some of our scores from about 6 months ago in this region. We were not happy with these scores. We wanted our NPS scores to be 40 or higher. So we were not making the cut here. We implemented a lot of these changes and put a lot of focus on making sure that we were measuring how our hiring managers feeling, how are our candidates feeling about every possible thing we're doing. And then since that time, and employing a lot of these strategies and processes, we were able to get these scores up. And we shine a light on this stuff. So when there are quarters where these numbers are terrible, the CEO sees what the scores are. I want to shine a light on where the pain is constantly to be transparent about what we're doing. Because again, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that our brand is one that people love. So what does this all mean? So one, we just need to recognize the world has changed. And I think we probably all do. We realize we don't need to steal corporate directories anymore to get a leg up on your competitors. But information's everywhere. Data's everywhere. Talent's mobile. People are interacting with your brand at every possible turn. And then there are tools, processes that we need to really take very, very seriously if we're going to compete. My thesis is that what's going to happen in recruiting over the next 5 years there's some people who are going to be able to really step up and start thinking about these things and doing them well. I also think that people who can influence and tell a great story, their premium is going to go up. because finding people is not going to be the hard thing. It's going to be converting them. And all those that don't step up and pay attention to what's going on will be obsolete. They'll be the B, C, D players. And this stuff freaks me out because I think about some of those competitors. If they're thinking about this stuff and doing it well, I am not sleeping at night because they're going to kick my ass if I don't get serious about this stuff. And brands can no longer hide who they are, right? There's online, offline signals. People talk. The web is very, very transparent. There are third-party sites. You're probably measuring a bunch of stuff about your own brand. Internally, externally, every interaction you have with hiring managers, candidates, whatever it may be, your brand is under the spotlight. That's pretty darn sobering. It's another thing that keeps me up at night that I need to get serious. So an entire shift in mindset needs to happen. We also need to think about, we got the right people on the recruiting team that can do this, who can step up. I think that I've worked with a lot of mediocre recruiters in my career, and I've hired some of them. I don't know if they're going to be able to operate in this new world. Leading with data is really important. If you're not good at it, ask for help. Thankfully, I have incredible people that are awesome at telling stories with data, like James, who's on our marketing organization. Operationalizing this stuff, I needed help to do it. Reach out, but operationalizing is the key. If you have a big idea, you can't operationalize it, it's not worth anything. Ideas are free, they're everywhere. Building something that can scale is meaningful. And then continue to listen. We need to think about what we're doing and hear from our candidates, customers. Any feedback we can get, even if it's negative, is really, really valuable. So my big ask for everyone is, one, don't do it alone. So back to that opportunity statement. This is our time. I want to share this and get input from people because I think this is an opportunity for us collectively to raise the game across all of talent acquisition. But don't do it alone. Don't do it alone. Ask for help. When you go back to your office, my ask is go test out this segmentation process. Or test the purple squirrel one slide. Just test it out. See if it changes the conversation you have with people in the business, with your executives. And lastly, really take some inventory. Take stock of kind of where you are emotionally in all of this. Like I said, there are plenty of days where I've had long days and I'm just like, man, I'm exhausted. But when I think about what some of the best recruiting teams in the world that I've met are doing, it gets me on my toes. But today's your lucky day. Why? Because we're back to that opportunity statement that I wrote right when I started LinkedIn. No one's done this. The LinkedIn recruiting team hasn't done this. Well, we're just learning. I'm just sharing openly what's working, what's not working for us. So the good news is, this is an absolutely revolutionary time in recruiting. Period, full stop. That is true. Things are being disrupted. It's an incredible opportunity for us to increase the way we influence our business, the way we step up as business leaders, because at the end of the day, we're solving some of the hardest business problems that any company would face. The tools, the processes, the data is all there for us to do it in a way that we've never done before, and we need to do it together. So that's our opportunity. I want this to be a call to leadership for all of us collectively to think about how we're going to together lead into the next decade, next 2 decades around what's going to happen in the world of talent. And I want us to be at the forefront of that. And then my last big ask, and I'm going to be back here to make sure this happens, is I want someone from this audience up here giving this keynote about the role they're playing in transforming the world of talent acquisition. Thanks, everybody.